Continuing the work they did for the Crash Bandicoot series, Toys for Bob is back to revive another classic PlayStation series that had seemingly gotten the axe by Activision. This time it's Spyro's turn, who had long been dormant within the Skylanders series but now returns in the traditional form better than ever. Considering this is a trilogy of games, it's hard to really review the story as a single game, but I'll do my best to sort of do a series in review. The original trilogy began with Spyro the Dragon and told the story of a small purple dragon named Spyro who was tasked with freeing his crystallized friends. The evil half-gnome/orc creature named the Nasty Nork froze all the dragons in Spyro's home after he was called ugly on live TV by one of the other dragons. Now Spyro must free all of his friends and defeat the evil Nork in the process. It was a familiar story that played with the theme of the runt of the litter or the outcast being the true hero among the world. As a story of never counting out the little guy, it worked well partially because it wasn't just a story about an outcast character, but one that was so sassy and feisty in every regard. Through his first entry in the series, Spyro became a household name instantly, leaving players charmed. This was then followed up with Spyro 2 Ripto's Rage, where Spyro simply just wanted to have a vacation. After the events of the first game, Spyro tried to take a beach vacation only to end up in a brand new realm being taken over by an evil warlock. Being stuck in this new world because of that warlock, Spyro agrees to help its civilians by collecting the talisman needed to face Ripto and his minions and hopefully find a way home in the process. The sequel feels like a spin-off adventure, not entirely continuing the narrative of the first game, but feeling more like a Netflix-only TV show that sort of ties into the movie trilogy in theaters. Shout out to the How to Train Your Dragon series. Plenty of new side characters were introduced with this entry that fleshed out the cast of characters from the first game. I appreciated the little touches to the story, like how each side character essentially got their own loose narratives wrapped up through completing the guidebook collectibles at the end of the game. The last part of the trilogy was Spyro the Year of the Dragon. This title started off with a literal celebration of the Year of the Dragon, where new dragon eggs are brought into the realm of dragons. However, the festivities are quickly ruined by an evil sorceress and her henchwoman Bianca, who steal the dragon eggs. As a wrap up to the trilogy, it played out as a nice bookend with plenty of twists and turns and a surprisingly dark conflict once you think about the connotations as to why those dragon eggs were stolen in the first place. While it's no secret that this series was targeting children during the whole mascot war of the 90s, it did manage to stand out among the rest for its charming cast of characters in a world that was fun to explore. Despite being 20 years later, their charm and admiration hasn't died down a bit, proving that the universe of this trilogy is as great as it ever has been, even now as an adult. The timeless gameplay of the classics are preserved here with the Reignited Trilogy. Despite each new entry in the series being an evolution of the previous, you can boil down each game into a 3D platformer collect-em-all. Whether you're saving dragons in Spyro 1, collecting the talisman in Spyro 2, or saving dragon eggs in Year of the Dragon, you'll be collecting something in all three games. What changes in each game is Spyro, or rather the things he can do. In the first game, Spyro can run, breathe fire, and glide to faraway platforms. That moveset was simple but felt tight at the time, and with the reinvented controls and friendlier camera in this remake, platforming has never felt more polished for these games. Making those long jumps of faith is much easier now with the control of the camera. Moving on to the second game, platforming gets branched out with swimming, expanding the types of exploration you can perform with Spyro. From a gameplay standpoint, it really did feel like an evolution of the original game, while the third game felt more like it was forcing change for the sake of feeling new. New playable characters were introduced in the last part of the trilogy, and though they certainly felt like they were shoot in, they, along with a few new minigames, helped keep the classic platforming feel fresh and new. As an entire package, the trilogy hasn't seen much alteration from a gameplay standpoint, outside of the improved controls making everything just feel tighter. I'd argue though that there wasn't really much to improve in terms of the gameplay outside of the camera. Collecting items, performing challenges, fighting bosses, and even just playing as the other playable characters in the third game, they've all been translated well with this remake, with the visual upgrade taking center stage. Being a remake of all three games, the Reignited Trilogy looks absolutely stunning. Everything that was in the original games, like the worlds, environment, placement of villains, and NPCs, are all still here. What's outstanding though is how the visual upgrade doesn't just make the worlds look prettier, obviously, but how much better they feel. Piles of polygons that were supposed to be characters before, well, technically they're still piles of polygons, but they have way more personality now. The dragons you save from the first game, for example, feel like their own unique side characters that could easily be a protagonist in a children's animated film. They're much more impressionable now. The same can be said with the large cast of characters from Spyro 2. I mean, characters go from looking like this to this. The results I think speak for themselves. I love the minor touches too, like how Spyro's fire breath can react with its lighting in reaction to the rest of the world, burning up grass in a field or just brightening up a dim cave. Everything looks so much more saturated and I dig the new look, giving all three games a sort of animated look to them on par with the recent Ratchet & Clank remake. It's not entirely without flaw though. I noticed that a few cutscenes in Spyro 2 could look a bit compressed at times with artifacting happening in the background of those scenes. As for performance, on the base PS4 and Xbox One, the game runs at 1080p 30 and 1440p 30 on PS4 Pro and Xbox One X. I played the game on PS4 Pro and was sort of surprised to see a few frame rate dips on occasion when charging through enemies. It isn't game breaking by any means, but it's certainly noticeable along with the strong use of motion blur throughout all three games. There was also a couple of glitches like enemy hits not entirely registering right away. Again, they were more rare than common occurrences, but they were still there. I also noticed that the loading times were significantly longer in Spyro 1 than any of the other games, an oddity that I picked up on while playing each one of them. Despite these slight bugs and issues, as a whole, I found the trilogy from a visual standpoint to be beautiful. I'd even go as far as to argue that an innocent bystander could easily mistake a UI-less gameplay video of this game as an animated film just joining the likes of Crash Insane Trilogy and Ratchet & Clank. It's a given with a remake of a game that you'll see some sort of improvement to the visuals. The same can't always be said about the music. That's why it's astonishing to see that not only is the original music from the PS1 games here, but also completely remade tracks by the same composer of those classics are here too. You're given the option to switch between both versions of the songs from the options menu in all three games. I even often found myself switching between the two different versions just to hear the differences, and I was even more surprised to realize that I actually like some of the newer versions better. Further adding on to this is that Tom Kenny, who voiced Spyro in Spyro 2 and Year of the Dragon, reprises his role in all three games, revoicing both old and new lines for the character. It's an extra step that could have easily been missed, but I'm happy that attention to detail came through. The new lines for some of the classic characters in combination with their updated looks truly makes them feel more lifelike, like vital characters in the story, rather than just prettier looking NPCs. Spyro the Reignited Trilogy nails it with its name because that's how this trilogy feels. While I'd argue that the classic trio never lost their flame or spark to begin with, their flame has never been brighter. Playing all three games now in 2018 for the first time since they were all released, their gameplay has aged well enough to where I found the platforming and puzzles both approachable and occasionally challenging. While I still remember some of the secrets of the games, I just as easily had moments where I derp on landing a glide. To anyone playing these games for the first time through these remakes, you're in for a treat getting what feels like a brand new 3D platformer that will instantly become a classic. Spoilers, it's because they are. Sure, there's still some blemishes here and there with this reimagining, but even with those bugs, I'd choose this trilogy over Crash any time of the week if I was forced to only play one. I give Spyro the Reignited Trilogy a 9 out of 10. Thank you all very much for watching my review. If you enjoyed it, then please consider giving it a thumbs up and subscribing for more videos just like it. You can also find my Twitter, Instagram, and Discord in the description down below. Hope you guys all have a great day, and keep on gaming.